I am Ryan Davis. I perform as Kadesh Flow. I'm a rapper, songwriter, trombonist. So my musical start is very, very juvenile and boyish, and it's so funny to me that I do these things professionally now, because I was in the recorder class we had to be in 5th grade. I don't know how anybody tolerated that monstrosity that came out of that class, but the band director, a wonderful band director, she got remarried, so it might be Leslie Owens now. By the time Leslie Stover, really great. She, demonstrated all the instruments, so she was trying to recruit for beginning band, and the trombone sounded like fart noises, and I was like, I want to make fart noises, so I chose trombone. I'm not lying, I promise. And with rap, it was a couple weeks into the school year, so it was like 2 weeks after I started playing trombone. I was on the back of the school bus, roasting a guy about their breath, and they had, some of my cousins had a parody of Destiny's Child, Say My Name, and we had a version of it that was like, how'd I go? Close your mouth, your breath smells like onion, sour cream and funyuns, need to close your mouth. And they were like, well, the R&B remix always has to have a rap verse. Can anybody rap? And I was like, I can rap. And I wrote this really just atrocious verse about somebody having bad breath. So that's how I started rapping. Kadesh Flow is a name that was kind of placed upon me. I was really uncomfortable with it initially, but it basically came up at the best way I can describe it is a God conference in Alabama. It's like just super worship, everything. And Kadesh is Hebrew. It's spelled differently than how I spell it, but it basically is what holy translates back to. And the ancient Israelites, in reference to God, they were like, well, there's this presence we can't describe. You're distinct. You're like not describable, and you're different. Kadesh basically means set apart or indescribably different or distinct. I was gonna change my name because I had this really silly rap name. I was gonna change my name to a character I had made up named Absalom Phoenix.
What? Absalom
Phoenix. And my friends were like, no, but you're so Kadesh, like who raps and plays trombone and talks about what you talk about? And I was like, yeah, but I'm not, they use that to describe God, like, nah. But it stuck, and I just kept it. It was just Kadesh that about a year into that I added the flow. And so in middle school, I saw them, and there was this guy, I don't know where this guy is now, but his name was Casey Kerrigan, I think. And then he was on trombone, and then this guy, Kevin Cowler, on saxophone, who is now like doing things internationally and has been for a while. But Casey was unreal on trombone, and I have this thing, I still kind of have it, where like I pick somebody, and I'm like, I want to be better than them by the time I get to where they are. So him, he was way older than me, but I wanted to be better than he was by the time I got to being a senior in high school. And then there was a guy who was a senior when I was a freshman, Paul Pashon, same thing, really good. And I wanted to be at or above his level by the time I got to my senior year. I think I was able to do both of those. Paul, his senior year, got 6th chair in the top all-state band in the state, and I got 1st. And so that kind of like checked the box. With WYCLIFFE, I think what made him stand out to me was you hear a lot of the great pantheon of trombone players, jazz trombonists. They're more smooth. It's like an opera singer inside of a sultry brass sound for a lot of people. WYCLIFFE can do that, but he was the first person I heard really be rough and like own some of the just kind of bravado and anger that can be made with the trombone sound that's more of like the southern New Orleans-ish, and Central and South American trombonists where, yeah, you can do the soft singing thing, but you can also just really get after it. So he was the first person I heard who was prominent, who could play like that at a high level really well. Like Faison did a really good job of, I still just call him Faison, that's funny. But did a really good job of just facilitating an environment where if you wanted to get better, he would help you do all the things you needed to do to get better. Like, you know, the band had a good band association, so we make an all-state, and my family not really having much money, they just took me and paid for the hotels. My advisor, Andrew Dewar, who actually studied under Anthony Braxton at Wesleyan University. Anthony Braxton was running with John Coltrane and is one of the pioneers of like free jazz and experimental jazz. The wave, I guess, like a wave from the 60s. He's a MacArthur genius. Dr. Dewar studied under him, and I was in his first class of advisees as he came to the University of Alabama. And he still does crazy stuff. Like,
Do you still stay in touch with them?
Yeah, he's actually taking me to dinner every time I'm going back to Tuscaloosa. And a lot of the faculty from my new college program are kind of still in mentorial with this. The lady who's the dean of the department now was one of the professors then. There's Julia Cherry, her husband John Miller, the former dean of the department, Natalie Adams, and the former department head before her, James Hall. Dr. Hall actually is the person who, like middle of my sophomore year, I walked into his office, and he just, as busy as he was, just when you walk into his office, and I sat down and I was like, yeah, I'm BSing my way through college, and he recommended two things, that I applied for Creative Campus, which is this internship that built my entire resume, and that I do Hip Hop Summit, which one of his former students started, who was also a former Creative Campus intern, but now works for the University of Alabama. Hip Hop Summit, I ended up backing up a guy who's like a big bro to me now, and that's the reason I ever started performing live in college. So Hank Lazar, who was he was the vice president, he's retired now, but he was the vice president of academic affairs, or the associate vice president, and he kind of started Creative Campus. He also is a Pulitzer Prize nominated poet. And when I talked to him about the conflict of wanting to do visual art and wanting to do business and rap, and he was like, man, I'm 60 and I don't know what I want to do with my life. And this guy went to Stanford for undergrad and UVA for his PhD and had multiple Pulitzer Prize nominations, you know? So that was impactful. My immediate boss at Creative Campus, Alexis Clark, who I started calling Mama Eagle. She's still Mama Eagle on my phone. Tanya Nelson, who is a designer in t-shirt, she just really just let me cut barge into her office and talk. And one of the things she told me that I never forgot was that I need to stop thinking so much when I was running away from myself as an artist. And I don't remember who she cited, but she said there was research that basically concluded that there are a lot of really smart people who aren't successful, and there are a lot of moderates to, you know, average intelligence people who are immensely successful because they're not smart enough to understand the odds and they just go for things. And she basically, I still struggle with this, but she basically was the first person to really convince me to pull myself out of overthinking, or try to. There's Ann Powers, who's a renowned music critic, and her husband Eric Weisbar, they teach in Alabama, and my ex babysat their daughter, and their daughter loved me, so I was by default the backup babysitter. And then Ann started kind of paying attention to my music, and so we had coffee when I was about to finish grad school, and she basically was like, you should go, she was like, you definitely outgrown here, but you should graduate to like a middle city versus going straight to LA, because the way you think it might suck your soul out. And I was like, I'm going to LA, but then I ended up in Kansas City and basically doing what she said. And Rachel Ramus, who I wasn't super tight with, I never took a class from her. I was planning on it, just didn't have the time. Film professor, she was at Alabama, now she's directing again. But she was on NWA Street Team and did a lot of hip hop documentaries, and is just really, really prolific and brilliant. And what she does is she's, you know, a Latina filmmaker, female filmmaker. There aren't a lot of her, but just like literally, just so much that she encouraged me to go after, just to do it, to go after like what I thought I should, versus trying to fit a certain academic mold. In context of my life, mentorship means someone reaching down and pulling you up as they come up, because everybody is still trying to build their own thing. Nobody's really arrived yet. But so it makes it more impactful that they would step outside of that and pull you up too. I think that's really beautiful. And like, a lot of these people, I really believe, like, actually love me. You know, there's a family sense of it. I don't really have any mentors who I don't view it that way. Yeah,
family.
Yeah, it's family. It feels weird, but I guess I do see myself as a mentor just because I've kind of gotten, I don't want to say forced into it, but when I was started my senior year at Alabama in undergrad, the new college program started having me talk to some of the younger kids, which there were people who did that with me, but then even in grad school, they would just bring me back, pretty much anybody who was entering. And like, new college is the sort of thing where it kind of serves three different people. It serves like the people who are going to college and don't know what they're doing at all and just kind of floating through trying to figure it out. But it's more rigorous than they expect it to be in a lot of senses. The second thing is people who like probably shouldn't have gone to college right out of high school, and they just need to be rescued and refocused, and the interdisciplinary thing really helps you with that. And the third one is somebody who's like, hey, I want to do geology, but I also want to design video games, and I also want to code. I want to develop an app to help with climate change or something like that, which is more where I was. I was like, hey, I want to design characters for video games, and I want to write graphic novels, and I want to rap, and I want to make beats, and I want to have some business background. And anyway, so whenever they had a kid who was coming in with a musical background who was like that, they always called me and asked me to come, like, just talk, work with the kids. I'd say kids. I was a kid. I don't really think there's much of anything that's consolidated outside of, things that are hyper specialized. It might be harder to get into. That's not bad, but like say Artist Inc., right? I had to get to a point before anybody told me about it. And there's a lot of organic stuff. I see a lot of people who hate on Tech Nine for not doing more for the hip hop community, but he literally features random rappers that he knows on his stuff. So I do think it's there from like individuals doing things, and I see a lot of people reaching down and whatnot. But structurally, I think we need something that actually can provide like funding and resources at, even if it's some kind of minimum level, for people to be able to make a project professionally, but also to properly promote it and publicize it, and to have like people who are guiding more younger artists on a front-to-back strategy for a single release, album release, coming through tours, because otherwise your crash courses.
I've seen it in others, so I know it's real, yeah. You could get it too, but you're too even killed, yeah. I'm hungry, plus I hate how rejection feels, yeah. Get out of my way, you'd best respect my zeal. Listen up, I'm gonna get what I'm after. I can face certain disasters.